25th, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Orlando, Indianapolis, Houston, and now,
Yeah.
Black Ink Radio.
What's going on, everybody?
What's up, y'all? We back in the building.
Welcome back, baby.
Thank you.
Glad to have you back. You've been missing a month of Sundays. How you feeling?
I feel good.
You feel good?
I feel good. I feel a whole lot better. Thank you.
That's good. Glad to have you back. So we want to welcome everybody to Black Ink Radio, Mold in the Clay podcast, where we discuss everything relationships every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we changing things up a little bit. We are partnered with the Atlanta Black Pride in their domestic violence series called Project Silence. And tonight we have two special guests that's going to be joining us. To the left of me, we have COO and my big bruh,
Amber.
Yep.
Cupid.
Around here.
Oh, Amber. Yes.
And then to the right of Big Bro, we have Melissa Arthur, who's a member of PADV. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for coming.
And we can't leave out my big bro who over there ducked out in the corner. What's going on, Rich? How you feeling?
I'm alright. I forgot my mic.
Yeah, I see. But they can hear you though. Yeah. It's all love.
Yeah. We like the new setup, though.
You got it looking real good in here. I
real
feel real
nice.
presidential with the
And
red
real
carpet.
Yes, I love it. So today, y'all, we're going to talk about toxic relationships and the myths about domestic violence and the LGBTQ community.
Yep. Yes.
And so this is going to be, for me, it's a touchy subject because I've been through domestic violence before. And this topic is very important to me. So I'm glad that I actually made it on the show because I missed the last one. But, to talk about this. So I'm glad that you guys are here so we can advocate and share with our viewers and educate them on certain things that goes on in domestic violence and kind of give them the signs and things to look for in those toxic relationships. So
Absolutely. So Melissa, question for you. So what are some of the biggest myths in dealing with domestic violence that you have experienced, not you yourself have experienced, but some of the myths that you have dealt with when it comes to individuals that you have helped or coached in a domestic violence situation?
Sure. I think the biggest one to really first start with is the fact that domestic violence has a certain look. And we know for sure domestic violence affects, we know for sure that domestic violence isn't particularly a certain race, a certain gender, certain age, a certain economic status, or a person having a certain type of education level. It can affect anyone. So that is the biggest myth to dispel because it really creates barriers for people who are seeking help sometimes, that they don't look like a victim of domestic violence. And then, of course, other myths out there is, oh, well, this person must have wanted or must like to be abused because they stay. And I know that we'll be talking more about that and what type of barriers of why this myth needs to be dispelled too, because there's again, barriers that unfortunately is set in place where someone is hard for them to leave. And then I would say that other myths would be, oh, well, this person, if they would stop drinking and they didn't have a substance abuse, whether it was drugs or alcohol addiction, they wouldn't be abusive. Well, we do know that if you do have a substance abuse problem, that it might increase the severity or the frequency of abuse, but it is not the cause of it. So we like to let people know that just because this person is addicted to a substance doesn't mean that that is the reason why this person is being abusive to you. And even if that was to be out of the picture, this person still would be abusive. And another one would be, you know, a lot of times they like to put it on the actual victim. Like, you caused this.
Yeah.
If you weren't like this, I wouldn't have to react like this. No, you need to be accountable for your own actions. And no matter what provocation you can come up with, that doesn't constitute abuse. But I would say specifically to the LGBTQ relationships, we see a lot of times where people feel like domestic violence means only in a heterosexual relationship. And IPV happens, which I'm sorry, is intimate partner violence, but that happens in any relationship.
Right.
Or it's not as severe if it's not a heterosexual relationship. That is incorrect. If it's not similar, it might be even more physical violence that happens in relationships that are not heterosexual. So those things are really important to dispel so that people really can start getting help.
And that's a great point. And I never just took the time to realize what you just said, a key point. Because a lot of times when somebody is dealing with substance abuse, let's just say alcoholism, and a lot of people who's in domestic violence situation who have a partner who deals with substance abuse would typically say if they didn't drink, then they wouldn't be this way. But you know, for you to bring to view that, hey, even if they didn't drink, they would still be that way, because it's not necessarily the substance abuse that's making them that way.
Right. Yeah. In order for it to be, we do understand that there's a intersection of domestic violence and substance abuse, or sometimes there's even an intersection between domestic violence and mental health. But the reason why we say either one of them doesn't cause someone to be abusive is because it would mean that every person who is addicted to drugs or alcohol, or every person who has mental health, is now abusive. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
So therefore, it cannot be the cause of the abuse.
Right. It's definitely the person, and the reason why I say that is because my dad was very abusive to my mother. He was an alcoholic, and he was addicted to drugs, and I know all of that stemmed from him being in the army and going to war and all of that. And so even after he got help for his substance abuse, it did not change the fact that he was not still abusive to my mother, you know. And so I know for a fact that it's not because of that. You just are an abusive person, you know. You are just who you are, you know. And so even with me seeing that growing up, my mom stayed with my dad for over 25 years. So that's abuse that she endured all of those years, you know. And as children, we watch that. So as a young teenage girl, and you get a relationship that ends up being abusive, because that's what happened to me. I ended up in an abusive relationship, not realizing and not knowing that it's wrong. But that's what I was used to seeing.
Right. And so many, you know, it's funny that you brought that up, but so many people don't know what healthy even looks like, from teens to adults.
Yeah.
Because the image that they had, either it was a single parent household, so they never seen a relationship of how two people interact healthy, or sometimes it's because they seem, like you said, the only image was unhealthy, and then they don't know that that's an unhealthy image, and then this is how they react in their relationship, because that's the only thing they know, which is why Partnership Against Domestic Violence, we work with a lot of preventative education and training on what healthy relationships look like, because you'll be surprised how many people didn't have a positive understanding of what healthy is.
And that's a great point, because when I met my wife, and for the first couple of years, I used to wonder why, like, she would allow certain people to treat her certain ways. And it wasn't until her and I got together to where I was able to show her this is what a healthy relationship looks like.
Right.
So now what she's been doing is she's been evaluating all of her friendships, all of her relationships, and she's been saying, like, dang, this amount of time I've been really having some unhealthy friendships, some unhealthy relationships.
Toxic to me was normal.
It was, but she
That
had
was
to
normal
she
for
had to
me.
realize that.
I think I dated a young lady, and her statement to me was, I would rather you hit me than to not speak to me. Because if we have an argument, I will shut down. I'll just go into quiet mode and I'll just be like, look, we'll go over here and I'm watch TV and mind my business. And it doesn't mean that we're in a violent moment. It's just an argument that I didn't agree with you, or I didn't like what you did, and you didn't like what I did, whatever that is. And then I would go and I would sit on the couch and I just wouldn't say nothing, and she would just be like, I would have rather you shook me than that. And I know my best friend, her marriage, that young lady was so used to being in an abusive relationship that she expected that if you hit me, you love me. And because my bruh's not like that, my bruh would be like, I'm going to show you that this is what love is about.
Yes.
And that young lady she couldn't receive it because of the fact she had been so abused and so damaged.
Yeah.
And I think we all have to look at that. And to me, it's called, Captain Save-A-Ho syndrome. We try to save and show you that, hey, love is what everybody deserves that. I'm going to show you. And sometimes that makes their situation worse as a person who's been abused, and it doesn't help them.
Yeah. And for me, that's how it was for me too. For a long time, I thought that was love. If you didn't hit me or anything like that, I didn't feel like you loved me, because that's all I heard. Well, I only act this way because I love you. I heard that all my life. I act like this because I love you. So if you didn't yell at me, you didn't hit me, I'm thinking at that in my head something's wrong. Like, well, then you don't love me. And that was very toxic. I didn't realize that until I got much, much older. Like, oh my God, I'm toxic. Like something's not right here. Something has to change. Because when you start having children and you have daughters and then you have a son, you don't want them to have to endure things like that ever in their life. So I'm like, okay, I have to teach my children that this is not okay. This is not the way to go. And avoid all toxic relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship or friendships. Avoid them.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because when people think about healthy relationships, sometimes they only think about an intimate partner. But we have relationships outside of just the person that we're intimate with. So setting healthy boundaries, understanding consent, knowing effective communication works in every form of a relationship that you have, not just an intimate one.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that is true.
Have you ever been in a toxic relationship?
Yeah, I've been in a toxic relationship before. It was a toxic relationship, but you don't realize it's toxic until you actually leave that relationship, and you just be so mad at yourself, like, damn, why didn't I see all those signs? Like, the signs was right in front of me. I should have just left. But when you in it and you love somebody, it's like it's hard to see past it. Everybody else around you can see it, and they can tell you everything because they're not in it. But when you're in it, it's hard for you to see it.
And you'll always say, oh man, I'm working with her. You know what I'm saying? She just need a little love. Don't worry about it. I'm good. And then you realize that's not how you realize you've lost some of you.
Yeah.
In that process,
Yeah.
and I realized that in that particular relationship, that I was steadily trying to show her that she could be loved, and then I realized that, oh, wait a minute. I'm losing who I am, and then I'm willing to allow you to say anything to me now. Now you're becoming the abuser, and I'm becoming the person who's being abused. And so it once I started feeling that, I was like, wait a minute, I wasn't laughing, I wasn't smiling anymore. I was I was serious about everything, and I was mad all the time. So then I had to realize that, wait a minute, it's you who's causing me to be in this toxic situation. Now I can't show you how to love or even love you because look where we are. And so leaving that, luckily it was easy to just walk away. Because once I got to that point, I no longer I realized I didn't love you and I wasn't in love with you. I wish you the best. Don't come ask me for no help.
Right.
But I hope that you can you find some help. I will let you know there is the people that are gonna help you. I'm not that one though. And you do have to kind of wake up and let your friends, if you're a good friend, you're gonna stand by them and watch them and make sure they're okay too.
And be there for
and that's
them.
what happened. I had some friends that were really right there that were like, we tried to tell you, and I go, I know.
I had that too.
And they weren't mean about it. They were just like, we tried, man, we tried. And I was like, it's okay. I see it.
Yeah.
I'm good now. And they're like, come on, let's help. We're gonna help mend you. You know, and they cared for me. You know.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Melissa, what are some signs, some early signs
That was gonna be my question.
that people dealing with domestic violence should recognize?
And it does change. So I wouldn't say one might happen before the other.
Right.
Because it just depends on the person. Understanding the dynamics of intimate partner violence, it is really a person who is trying to assert power and control over another one, and it's a pattern. It's not just a one-time thing. So in that type of dynamic of trying to assert a power and control over someone else, it might look differently from relationship to relationship. They might need one tactic in one type of relationship versus an abuser in another relationship needs to do something else because you're dating and you're intimate with two different people, right? So I would say that just across the board, some of the red flags, and some of you guys might disagree with what red flags I'm about to say, but and we could talk about it. And I will put excessive in front of jealousy because we all can get jealous, right? Yeah. That's just human nature. We love someone, we see them, somebody talking to them, and we might just get in our feelings a little bit, right? But we come out of it and we don't stop them from doing anything just because of the jealousy.
Right.
So I always say excessive jealousy, which means that now I am purposely making sure that you don't talk to anyone else. Or if I see you talking to someone else, now I'm assuming the very worst. Oh, you looked at her? Oh, you must want to be with her, huh? So it's to a point where you cannot be doing anything and you're feeling like you're walking on eggshells. And I've even had clients that have said, I walk with my head down. Because if I'm looking up while I'm walking, he might think that I want to be with that person. And that will escalate and I have to deal with it when I get home. So instead of doing that, I just walk with my eyes looking at the ground.
And it's interesting that you said it because, and I laugh because it's crazy of what's going on, but I do a lot of TikTok watching. And there is this young lady that is blown up basically because of what she's doing. She has a cult with the BBWs. Women, and what she's done is they did a live, right? And it was her and one of her women in the cult. And somebody, as you know, you're watching, you can comment on what they're saying. And somebody put on there, "You are beautiful" to the young lady that the film. And the film said, no, I'm not beautiful at all. And she dropped her head and was like, no, don't say that. And the stud, and this is the one who controls the whole cult, was like, yeah, that's right. Don't, she ain't beautiful. Why you saying she beautiful? You won't tell my woman this, that. And I kind of went, you are like super, super toxic. And the thing is that some people don't even live near this woman. And she'll tell them like, cut yourself because you didn't call me. You were 5 minutes late, so you owe me 5 cuts. And these ladies will like literally. There was one lady she showed you like on her arm where she had literally was cutting herself because she was being punished because she was 5 minutes late calling this lady. And then like she's like, the lady will tell them like, you got to send me such and such amount of money, and it made me think about what you were saying in terms of that kind of thing. Is that to me is a very toxic thing when they drop their head and you take somebody's self-esteem when we really should be empowering each other.
Right, biggest cheerleader should be your partner.
With the story that Amber just shared with us, what makes them stay?
Well, first that's a cult, so it might be a little bit different than in a domestic violence relationship. I mean, I understand it probably has very much abusive behaviors because just like in a cult, I'm assuming there's a certain level of control and power going on there, right? In order for these people to stay within this cult. But for abusive relationships, again, it's a technique. We talk about, first of all, that with abuse, it's not just physical and sexual, but there's a lot of emotional and psychological things that go on in an abusive relationship. And one of the things that become a very big barrier is when abusers use isolation. So what they'll do, which is another red flag, they'll start separating you from everyone. And they'll start going, you know what? Your mom always has something to say. And I really don't think that they really appreciate the type of relationship you have with me. So maybe, you know, we just need to stop talking to her as much. Or maybe we need to move to a whole nother state. Or, you know what, your best friend, she always got something to say. She don't never have anything nice. I think she's jealous. And maybe you shouldn't even be talking to her because she's really damaging our relationship. So the next thing you know, this person doesn't have their best friend. They don't have their mom. Or it could be even the fact that this person now is being isolated from their family because their family has given so much advice and doesn't know really the dynamics of domestic violence and feels like, hey, clearly she should have been left or he should have been left because I told him how many times that this isn't healthy, that this is toxic. So you know what? You deal with it. That's what you love, then you go ahead and love it. Well, isolation then becomes a problem and a barrier because now this person, the only means of information they are getting is from the person who is toxic. It's from the abuser. So now they're completely disconnected from a support system that possibly could have supported them to get away from the abuser. And then of course, when you bring in children and you bring in potentially economic abuse, where maybe this person isn't making money because they're not allowed to work, or maybe this person is allowed to work, but every paycheck goes to the abuser. So now they don't even have a bank account. They don't have maybe even their own identification. We see in a lot of relationships, especially if someone's here undocumented, where they don't have possession of any of their legal paperwork, or their status here is dependent on the abuser. So there is several ways that there could be barriers of why someone just does not leave. And one of the things we like to explain is the cycle of violence. So, and I think you mentioned it a little bit about it because it'll start with what we say a tension stage, where this person might be walking on eggshells. They're trying to de-escalate. They're trying to stay away from this person. They understand that an explosion can happen. They're trying to stay away from them because they understand that violence can happen, right? And then the next stage is the explosion stage. And we like to say that's when any form of violence or any form of abuse can happen. So it doesn't have to be physical or sexual. It could be economic. It could be, you know what? You think you're big and bad. You think you make all this money. Well, now you're going to quit your job. So it doesn't have to be physical. But at this stage, when it is physical, at explosion stage, you see a lot of times when law enforcement get involved. You see a lot of times where someone's arrested, where maybe community resources come involved, like they might seek an organization like my own at PADV, where they're seeking shelter from us or resources to flee. They might get a protective order. And then you'll hear a lot of time where law enforcement or even the prosecutor's office might say, well, all of a sudden she comes in or he comes in, because I always like to do both. You know, it's not, again, domestic violence does happen to males. It's underreported, you know, but we say a lot of times females, because females are disproportionately affected by domestic violence. So we say females more than we do males, but it's both. But this person will come back and will be like, can you dismiss the case? I don't want to press charges. I don't want to continue. And a lot of that happens because when we get from the explosion stage, we go into the honeymoon stage where he's like, it's your fault, or I would not do this unless I'm not, you know, if it wasn't for the drinking, it was the alcohol that made me do it. I'm going to change. I'm going to go to AA. Or if that control doesn't come back because he feels like or she feels like they're losing control, then they might go to threats and intimidation, which might be, you don't work. What judge is going to give you these kids? So you can leave, but the kids are going to end up staying. You know, so it's kind of a cycle. And that cycle I love to talk about because it really explains like why people don't leave, that there's so many different things going on. And imagine if you throw in being, whether undocumented, you throw in being maybe a minority, black and brown community who might not want to call the police, or you throw in the fact that that maybe your experiences with the police and you're in an LGBTQ plus relationship and your experiences, they're not going to even see you as my intimate partner. Instead, they're going to see you as my roommate, or they're going to see it as just two guys fighting in the street, and not see it as, hey, there's dynamics of domestic violence in this relationship going on and I need help. So there's a lot of barriers that will keep, unfortunately, someone continuing in that cycle.
And they'll do, I know that, like, I've had, when in discussions, I've heard people say stuff like, well, she hit me and it was bad. And, she left for a couple of days, but when she came back, she bought me this big Gucci, or she bought me this big rock, or we going to Cancun, and it's
Honeymoon
all good.
stage.
You know what I'm saying? She said she was sorry. What's the problem? And then you, in your mind, you're like, okay, it's going to be okay. It happened at one time. And most likely, I know my mouth was flipped and I said too much. And then the abused person will start to give an excuse for that person, So I've seen that as well. It doesn't always have to go to the threats, even it goes as far as I can't live without you.
Right.
Yeah. I'll die. I'll kill myself if you leave me, or I'll kill, the
That's a
kids
red
and all of
flag.
us, don't love me to death.
Right.
Okay.
I'm good.
I'm good on it.
Yeah.
Don't love me to death. I don't, that's cute, but no, that's all right. I don't want to hear that. But I know that there are people who say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think somebody else told me, they said, when somebody says you complete me, that's not a good thing. That we think that is. We, as endurement, I would be like, oh, that's so sweet. But when you really think about it, you go, because if I walk away, then that means you're going to think you're not complete.
Yep.
And that means I can never leave because I have to be a party. So I think if we know ourselves, first of all, and can make sure that it's not so much that you complete me, but you are a great asset to me and with me. We feed off each other. And I think that's at the level of communication is also there.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
If she doesn't have, I've watched it where, and we are bad at it as black lesbians, we are very bad at it, where you get with this person and that when you started dating them, they had their girlfriends and you had your stud friends and y'all did your things. But then when you got together, she stopped hanging with her girlfriend, she stopped calling them, you stopped hanging with your friends. It's just the two of you. Yeah. Y'all did everything together. Wherever she went, you went. Wherever you went, she went. And then one day she or the stud woke up and said, I think I want to go to school. I'm gonna go sign up for school. Or somebody at their job said, you can do better if you'll go to school for 6 months and get this, degree or get this training. We'll move you up in your job. So either or, stud or femme, they'll go, I want to do that. And then that one person who doesn't go to school now is watching their partner go and be exposed to some new things that I don't know nothing about. So now she coming home, and where we had 24 hours like this with each other, she ain't got time to spend with me. She's not cooking no more.
Yeah.
She not cooking meals like she was before. She's like, I did meal prepping on Sunday. Yeah. When do we do meal prepping? When do we start doing that? I got to eat leftovers.
Change.
The changes. And then I now am on the phone with somebody going, I read that chapter too. And what did you think about that? So now that other person is thinking, wait a minute. You talking to them, you spending all your time getting to know them, and that's when you start having that will develop into some things where now you can't go to school no more. Or I don't understand. Instead of, well, let me look at myself. Maybe I can go learn to do something. Yeah. And even though it looks like you're going this way, but you are still growing together. Right. And encouraging that person, because at the end of the day, they're gonna move up in their job. And I think that someone else had told me that in Atlanta, we would think that the domestic violent numbers for lesbian is in the low income area, and it's not. It's actually in our executives level, because those lesbians are they're older, who have been closeted. They're not, they are as free as a lot of us are, where we can just walk around and be ourselves. They didn't have that luxury in their 20s and 30s. They had to be in the closet. And then, they fought for certain things in their job. And then it's stressful in their job because they're possibly the only woman in that position. They are the first to break in, so they have all that pressure, and then they take it out on their partners. And I've seen a lot of that where you have these two women who are very powerful. You know, they both have great educations and they're doing great things, but there's that one that is just a little bit more abrasive with how they handle each other. So I think that's also something that you have to look at.
And Melissa, just in closing, so we can wrap up, what are some resources out there that women or men who's dealing with domestic violence, what are some resources that's available to those people?
Well, I will say that no matter where in Georgia, there is a domestic violence agency that should cover your county. So Partnership Against Domestic Violence is the domestic violence agency for Fulton County and for Gwinnett County. However, there is one in every county, or one that covers a couple of counties, especially in the more rural place. You might have that where you have one that covers several. We were the first domestic violence agency in the state of Georgia and the fifth in the nation to be formed. So we do have two of the larger counties in Georgia, but we do help anyone, and you don't have to be in Fulton or Gwinnett to receive help from us or in shelter. But there is one in every county. And then what domestic violence agencies do is that, of course, we have shelter, but then we also have other resources to help in fleeing a domestic violence relationship. Because I do want to say that at the time that you choose to walk away is the time that you're at the greatest risk for fatality. So if you know someone going through a domestic violence relationship and they're wanting to leave, the best advice is to give them a crisis line number to one of the domestic violence agencies and allow an advocate to speak to them and safety plan with them. Because although your intention might be good, and you might have the intention on making sure that they get to safety, but not understanding really like how dangerous it is, could potentially put them in more danger. So there is resources out there, not only for shelter, but also if, let's say, you need supportive housing, counseling, support groups. If you need any resource, sometimes we get calls from clients where they're like, hey, I left, but I really think this person is stopping by my house and driving by every night, but I'm not sure. We have provided cameras so that they're able to know if somebody is driving by or know like this person is coming up to their door or on their property when they're not home or at night. You know, so there's ways that we can provide assistance to make sure we keep them safe.
That's awesome. That's awesome to have those resources. So, guys, we want to thank you for tuning in to Mold in the Clay podcast. We want to thank our special guests, Amber and Melissa. Thank you guys for coming in, joining in the conversation. And last but not least, y'all, look, if y'all haven't purchased y'all tickets yet to our Halloween party tomorrow evening, we are partnering with Red Mocha. And we have an awesome Halloween party tomorrow evening, 25 and up. The Eventbrite has been closed, but you can still purchase your tickets at the door. Go ahead and grab your costumes. Come get you a two-step on and enjoy some good vibes.
And some good music.
I know that's right. So you can, again, you can pay at the door. It's tomorrow night, 25 and up. The Eventbrite has been closed, but you can go to our Moldin_the_Clay page later on this evening, and you can see the information for the Halloween party that's going to be happening tomorrow. So make sure y'all get those tickets, and don't meet us there, beat us there.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
So we appreciate y'all tuning in to Mold and Clay podcast. Catch us next Friday. We love y'all. Peace.
Bye.
You are now tuned in to Black Ink Radio.
Turn up